This morning we're going to talk about not making A Course in Miracles your life. This is something that I sometimes talk about in workshops, and people could justifiably be upset and say, for example, to me and Gloria, not to mention our staff, well, you guys have made the Course your life, etc. And people would say that, you know, we've moved our lives to the foundation in Temecula, and now you're saying that we shouldn't make the Course our life. What the hell's the matter with you? Well, there may be something the matter with me, but not in terms of this. What I mean by this is really in terms of the content, not the form. That certainly we should make A Course in Miracles our life, if indeed this is our spiritual path, and this is what we believe in, and we believe will help us get home. But it's not so much the form. Not that there's anything wrong in doing something with the Course with your life, but you don't want to change the form to help the content. You use the form to get you back to the content, but it's the content that should always be in the foreground of your mind. And that content is the Course's purpose, which is to help us accept the atonement for ourselves so we can awaken from the dream and realize that we never left our Father's house. And the Course's way of helping us do this, to accept the atonement, is to practice forgiveness day in and day out, hour by hour, minute by minute, even second by second, always challenging the ego's misperceptions, misconceptions, and lies that would tell us that, number one, there's a world out there, and number two, which is even more important on a practical level, that the world out there impinges on us, that the world out there makes us happy, makes us sad, gives us pleasure, or gives us pain, gives us life, ends our life, that somehow the world out there is substantive, is real, and is very effective in changing how we are, changing our moods, changing our bodies, etc. That is the lie, and all the ego's misconceptions, all its misperceptions, all the things it tells us are true, are all simply part of its plan, kind of like a master plan, to convince us that we are bodies and not minds. And if the body is real, then of course the thought that made the body is real, namely the ego's belief that the separation is real. And if all that is real, that I am real, and my individual, special, unique self is very real, and is who I am. So when I say not to make A Course in Miracles your life, I'm really saying don't use the Course as a defense against the work you're supposed to do. You could be a plumber, you could be a teacher, you could be a public official, you could be a nobody in terms of how the world would look at you, and still practice this Course. Simply because one declares oneself A Course in Miracles teacher, or A Course in Miracles student, or has an organization, doesn't make you a pupil, a real student of the Course. What makes you a student of the Course is the daily practice of challenging every, as I said just before, challenging every thought that the ego tells you is true. Any thought that argues for the differentiation of God's Son, that people are different from each other, and these differences are significant and make a difference, all of these are to be challenged, looked at, and discarded as not being true. You know, the Course tells us that our task is to deny the denial of truth. All right? The truth within the dream, right, is that we are all the same. This is a reflection of the actual truth that we are all one as Christ. But within the dream, that truth of our oneness is reflected in the universal sameness of God's Son on the level of the mind. We all have a wrong mind, a right mind, and a decision maker that chooses between the two. Right? That is the truth within the dream. The lie is that we are different, and these differences, of course, are always based upon the body, the seeming reality of the body, and these differences are what we judge. Either we judge them as being positive, i.e. special love, or we judge them as being negative, i.e. special hate. So this is what makes us a student of the Course. So when I say don't make A Course in Miracles your life, don't form a special relationship with it. Don't feel that your day will never work out if you don't do your workbook lesson in the morning, or that you don't have some quiet time to read the text. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing any of that, to be sure. But if you become dependent on it, which is the meaning of special relationships, if you are dependent on the Course for your salvation, then you're in trouble. Because you're dependent on a form. You're dependent on a book. What you should be dependent on is the thought system, the right-minded thought system of the miracle or forgiveness, which will awaken you from the dream. So the point of all this is to really look at one's relationship with the Course, just as one would look at one's relationship with one's spouses, children, parents, lovers, friends, etc. Right? And what's so important about understanding the sonship of God is that it's not the form. As the Course tells us, even the smallest grain of sand is part of God's Son, which means the Course in Miracles, as an external form that seems to have no life, that's part of God's Son. And we form special relationships not only with people, not only with substances, but also with objects. Right? And the Course is just one of those objects, in fact, a very favorite one that the ego uses to trap us. So my plea is to use the Course as a way to make the Course no longer necessary. Jesus tells us in the Course that the aim of any teacher is to make him or herself dispensable. The purpose of A Course in Miracles is to make itself dispensable, that you become so much a part of its thought system that you become its thought system, and you become the Course itself. And if you practice your lessons diligently, day in and day out, once again, that's how you'll reach that point. And then you'll reach the point where you're beyond the form entirely and have just become so identified with the content of love. And that's the actual source of the Course, and that is what A Course in Miracles is, that right-minded content of love.